Howdy, folks. I'm Jeff with special guest Eric Merchant, Merchant Automotive.
Hi. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Eric, we're so glad that you came down on a road trip from Michigan.
Long way from Michigan. We made the trek down for Vision and spent some time there with that great event. And then after that, just jumped on the road and kind of seeing the countryside. And here I am in central.
Midlothian, Texas. And we're so glad you came down, but you're excited because you have a story you wanted to share. Y'all just had your 20th anniversary,
That's right. 20 years in business as of May 4th. I'm sorry, March 4th.
March 4th, just last week. So tell us a little bit about the story because that's what we like to share is we want to hear the stories. And it was basically to the date 20 years from when you started your LLC. And a lot of folks don't know you have a shop and you have an aftermarket warehouse business.
Yeah. So there's a couple aspects to the business. One is the drive in service, another part is a manufacturing sector. And then we also do e commerce and retail sales of parts. So parts that we manufacture as well as other parts that are related to the GM diesel aftermarket.
And I didn't really realize that you actually make parts, but you had told me earlier that y'all have a CNC machine and stuff. I didn't realize you actually make the parts and sell them.
Yeah, we've got a machine shop with three CNCs as well as some robotic weld stations and some manual areas as well. So we're
So tell us how you started that. Did you get into the manufacturing first, or you started working on them and then decided, oh my gosh, we need some aftermarket parts?
my my story starts in the dealership. I was a dealership tech right out of high school and roughly 10 years in the dealership in GM dealerships, started in the Cadillac space and then went into the trucks. And it was always heavy line,
Engine
transmissions,
work,
engines. Yep.
engine and transmission.
I'm not a trim tech by any means. And I don't want to be crawling around underneath the dashboard. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So did the heavy line and was in a couple different dealerships over the years. It wasn't just one. Learned a lot, good and bad, but really didn't know any different. And the diesel thing came about. It's an odd, it's not really odd. It's just a unique story, I feel. And basically, how that came about is just by chance. And I was in the dealership 2002 and I wanted to buy a crew cab pickup truck. And I've been a GM guy my whole life. Just that's what I was around. And if you wanted a crew cab pickup truck, you had to buy 3/4 ton or 1 ton. There was no half ton crew cab at that time. So that's what I was looking for. Um, Looked at a few of them on the dealership lot, the GMC dealership I was at, and took one home. A test drive. It was a forest green color, tan interior, and it checked the boxes. It was a crew cab. The 3/4 ton I wasn't excited about because I had no reason for it, but I felt I could deal with the ride difference. Sure, whatever. It was a 6 liter versus the 5.3 that a half ton would have had, but I was okay with that. The crew cab was the most important part to me. I didn't really love the truck, but it worked. I brought it back in the next day, and later that afternoon there was a carrier that came in with another load of vehicles, trucks for the lot, and I remember looking at the top of that thing. If memory serves, it was the third truck back from the front, sitting on the top of this carrier, and it pulled in, and it instantly caught my eye. Like, I mean, just the whole, you know, everything else went dim. The sun shone just on this one color, and that was quite literally what it was. And I watched the carrier pull around the back lot where they would typically unload, and I probably lost a half hour of my life waiting for this thing to get unloaded. The transport driver unloads it, parks it. I go up and I jump in it and I says, I'm going to pull this around, make you some space, and get it out of your way. I'll get the information to the sales. And I'm in my dealership uniform, so that probably didn't seem out of place to him, or he didn't care. And I remember tucking this thing back in the corner of the parking lot
Ah,
because I was not letting go of that. And there was no window sticker in it. And it wasn't until I got inside of it and started it, and I thought, well, this thing sounds funny. Okay. Well, then I realized that it was a diesel. I didn't give a lick of care about that. It was crew cab, and the color.
what color was it?
The color. I can't tell you.
Ah,
No, I can tell you. But the color is what did it. And the sun hit it, and it was August 2002, and the color danced around, and I never seen that color before. It was a brand new color for 2003. And again, this is August of '02. So they were just starting to trickle in the '03 model year stuff. But the color, Jeff. So I took the keys up to the salesman, and
I'm waiting on the color.
I know. I I took the keys up to the sales guy, and I said, it didn't have anything on them. There was no dealer tag or anything like that. And I told him where it was parked, and he was okay. And there was no window sticker in it. And he come back. He says, "Okay, when we get paperwork, I'll let you know the invoicing or whatever they get when they get new vehicles in." So it was a day or so later. He comes up and he goes, "Okay, I got the deal on that. It's a diesel, right?" And I said, "Yeah, yep, no big deal, whatever." And then he told me the price. And at that time, I quickly realized that a diesel was about $10,000 more than a gas. And after I made do with that, at that point, I was sold. It didn't matter. It was the color. So he wrote it all up, and it was just like the most beautiful thing in the world for a factory color. It's bugging you, isn't it?
I'm trying to think if it was like either that blue or
It was Arrival Blue.
oh my gosh.
It was Arrival Blue. GM only used that in '03 and '04. It wasn't very many of them. And this wasn't a special order or anything like that. It just came in equipped as is, and I had the gray leather interior, and that was all done.
So now you had to learn how to work on diesels.
At that, yeah. And it being heavy line, diesel kind of fit in with that. So the 6.5s were nothing new. Um, we didn't see a ton of them, but that wasn't it. It wasn't outside the normal scope. But the Duramax was new. Those had only, 2001 was the first model year. So there wasn't a lot of them out there, especially that were needing service. And this was the greater Grand Rapids area. So it was a fairly metro area. And we would see them come in, but it wasn't the stereotypical Grand Prix or Bonneville or Yukon, the common things that a Pontiac GMC dealership would see.
And it wasn't like you was in Texas where that was a normal vehicle, everyday vehicle.
Yeah, probably not as common as they would be in Texas. But in a dealership setting, and I don't know if this is just me and maybe other people have an opinion or think I'm crazy, but in a dealership setting, in the technician side, everybody likes to work on the common stuff because frankly, it's where you make the most money. Again, the Bonnevilles, the Grand Prix, the Yukons, the Envoys, everyday normal stuff. When something comes in that's abnormal or potentially comes with a fussy owner, technicians tend to go to the corners and scatter. So in the Chevy world, the Corvette owners, most techs didn't want to work on a Corvette. But if you drove a Corvette as a personal vehicle, no matter what year it was, you were the Corvette technician in that dealership. and that applied, what I found out, that applied to a Duramax,
To the diesel.
to the diesel. So by default, because I owned one now at this point, I became the Duramax tech. And I thought, okay, no big deal. Um, it was interesting to me anyways, because it was, I wasn't a diesel fanatic, but it's something new and nobody else wanted to do it. So I figured at some point that mean captured market, and in a flat rate environment, you'd be silly to throw your arms up and turn work away. At that point, I'd done most of the dealer offered training that was on that already, just to stay current with it, and had done some work on them as they'd come in over the top. Um, and again, they were, there was just starting to see some of the injector issues that would come in. So I quickly realized that just what it was going to be, and I kind of embraced that. I had no idea how that would change the future though, or what that would do in the future going forward. I closed, or we did the paperwork on that. It was August 23rd, 2003. And the reason I know that date, it was a Friday. I turned 25 on August 24, 2003. And I remember a huge drop in my car insurance rates, which went well combined with this new expensive pickup that I just had to have. And as time went on, I had there was a customer that had come in that also had a truck, and it was the same color, same cab. So we kind of built a friendship just based on we had matching trucks. He was a customer, I was the dealership technician, and he was kind of interested in the aftermarket side of things, and he was showing me online the discussion forums that were popular at that time. It was before social media, the forum boards, and I'd go on them, and I could see where there was all sorts of people that were asking questions or sharing information, things like that. And it was a lot of 6.5 diesel, a lot of late model. The Duramax stuff was coming out, and kind of got into it through that, enjoying that, and was able to offer people advice or help from a different perspective, or help them if they were struggling with something, again, as much as possible when you're dealing with just discussion forums. And this was the time before egos is the only word that comes to mind. The social media experts. um, so I'd built up a following through those platforms, through those networks, and then that would turn into customers in the surrounding area coming to the dealership to have work done if they were within somewhat of a range. So it started in a 50, 75 mile radius, and they would come in to that particular GMC dealer, and then it went to 100, 150 miles, and then it kind of started growing from there. And then those customers would come back and actually buy a vehicle. So the dealership took notice, which was kind of nice, but they didn't really. Again, flat rate tech, what I noticed is I'm spending more time with these people, and I'm not getting any compensation for that. And I guess I wasn't really expecting it, but I noticed my production was going down, which is my paycheck. So I was trying to draw that balance. But and then through those discussion forums, people would reach out to me because I knew I was in the dealership. Hey, can I buy this? I need this. And this was just oddball little dealer parts. I would turn that over to the dealer parts department, and they would take care of it. Well, again,
Nothing extra going in your pocket.
no, other than fielding a phone call and writing all this information down and turning it over to somebody else to reap the reward. Um, it took me a long time to realize that wasn't profitable. Late '03, and the other thing that was kind of popular then was chat rooms. And I remember somebody reached out to me in a chat room and said, "Hey, I'm looking for mud flaps for my brother's truck, but I don't see any on your website." And I could be wrong on how that went, but I'm like, I don't have a website. And he goes, "Well, why not? You should have a website." I'm like, because I don't know anything about putting a website together. And this young man had worked back and forth with me, and he was explaining to me what a domain name is. And he goes, "What would your domain name be if you had a website. I'm like, first of all, what is that? And he goes, oh, that's what people type in to find you. Okay. So we went around a little bit and I would rattle off something and he would say, oh, that's available. That's not available. And we settled on, or I settled on gmdieseltech.com. So then he had some platform and he'd send me a link. He goes, just sign up right here and put your credit card in and then you can start building a website. And this is somebody I've never met other than discussion forums. Well, as it turns out through conversation, I believe he was 14 years old
Oh,
at that time, but he knew what he was talking about. And I was like, okay, again, young on the internet, we probably would do things a lot different nowadays. So he introduces me all this stuff. He shows me how to set it up. We do this domain name and this hosting and how to add a product and upload all this stuff. And next thing you know, I've got a website and I would add product on there, just the stuff that people were asking for, maintenance filters, mud flaps that he was looking for. And it just kind of started out that way. And I certainly didn't know anything about anything beyond that, whether it be internet or SEO or Google or any of that. So just from those discussion forums and the moderators of those pages and the administrators of those pages recognized that I was helping out. So they were giving me some leeway on some advertising. So I would drive people there to my little website. And then that turned into, I should probably get this to the next level, and went to a local lawyer in town, did the LLC, and that's where the 20 years comes from.
oh my gosh. So you actually had started out selling parts, putting a little extra in your pocket.
Yeah. And I would and I had an arrangement with the dealership where they would sell me parts at a reduced rate because they didn't really want to mess with shipping stuff out. They were dealing with cross the counter sales. That was their priority. So I would take care of all the shipping and arranging all that type of thing and the packaging and sending stuff out that way. And in return, of course, I would make a profit on the parts.
And then you took the big leap and said, okay, I got the LLC. I need a building or I need a shop or I need.
Sorta, but I really think I'd still be in the dealership at least a lot longer than I would have, except uh, March 15, which got to be almost an anniversary for that. Uh, they had terminated me. So March 15, 2004, 2005, March 15, 2005, me and the service manager kind of butted heads a lot. And he was not the service manager that was there when I hired in. But one thing I did realize is that no matter how well we did or did not get along, only one of us had the power to hire and fire. And I was not that person.
Oh,
So March 15, I get terminated from the dealership. Um, the reasoning was work lacks credibility. I still remember it. The form, it was spelled out. There was no examples, and it was just post. That shop was just post being a union shop. The union was gone at that point, but it was in there, and there was a lot of things that had to be done before that to remove somebody from the shop or something. So they had to. It wasn't just a you're done, and it didn't bother me. It really didn't bother me, and I thought, okay, no big deal. So I went back out in the shop and finished the job I was working on because I knew that if I didn't finish it, somebody would come along and wrap it up the last half hour and take all my hours on that job that I would be flagging. Um, Went home that night and I remember making a post on those forums and it just said, I got fired today. And the outpouring of support from all these people on these forums was just huge. So I thought, well, what have I got to lose? And at this point, I did have a hoist in my garage. I'd put that in within the last year. And when I say my garage, it was a parking spot At that point, I lived in a mobile home park and I had an attached garage on it. It was, I guess you'd call it one of the up and coming type parks. And you wouldn't see it from the outside, but you open the doors and there was a two-post toy stick in there. So I was doing a lot of transmission work on the weekends, not pulling a work away from the dealership, but just doing that stuff on the weekends. And it would be two typically on a Saturday from people all over the eastern half of the United States. So just continued to grow the name. And then after getting terminated, I realized that I didn't want to just go to the next dealership and play the same game. So after about a month, I took a leap and leased some space in the next town over. I think it was 3,500 or 3,800 square feet. I thought, what am I going to do with all this space? And it was scary. At that time, I had two kids under two and sole income. And, I had the LLC established, but there was no savings. There was no nothing. So it was bootstrapped from day one. I would do a job, buy a piece of equipment, do another job or two, be able to buy another piece of equipment, another parts washer or a lift or build a bench. In the shop next to me that I was leasing from, I was kind of in a lean-to of their main building was a sheet metal shop. So they were very helpful with, supplying steel. I mean, I would buy it, or if I needed something bent up, I built a lot of workbenches, nice heavy built benches for transmission work, and just continued to grow it.
Very supportive wife,
Hmm.
because it's like, okay, what do you mean you're buying more tools and equipment?
Yeah, and I didn't know the difference between my money and the shop's money. I mean, I knew the difference, but there was no line. There was no separation. I'm pretty sure we ran out of the same bank account for everything. And, I'd buy a piece of equipment. And then the next job, I'd be able to pay a bill, a household bill. And that was definitely not the smartest way of doing things. But again, I didn't know any different. I didn't have a bookkeeper. I didn't have a business background. I was a technician my entire life. That's what I did in school. That's what I did outside of school. That's all I knew.
And that's one of the issues in our industry now is these techs come in and they say, hey, I'm gonna be a shop owner, and in different cases like yours is similar to mine. It's like, okay, you were kind of pushed into it and didn't have an option. That was, it's like, okay, hey, I'm the diesel expert in the area right now. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you have encouragement both from outside on customers that are, hey, we'll use you, and then you have encouragement from your wife that's like, okay, we'll try this.
And I think most technicians that I know to this day, even, I genuinely believe we're too stubborn to fail, but we're not smart enough to know how not to fail. We just know that we're too stubborn to fail. And up until 18 months ago, I think I learned more in the last 18 months of good information than I learned in the previous 18 years of school of hard knocks and mistakes. And oh man, we won't even talk about mistakes, but
But that's part of our industry. When you talk there initially about egos, we have egos, and then others have egos, and it's like, hey, they don't want to help. And now there's so many folks that want to help, that want to teach you, but we don't always know, oh my gosh, I should be going to this training. I should be going to this expo. And and we talked about this earlier, most of the training that has been available has been mechanical, not management.
and I didn't know about either one of those. I mean, yeah, I was familiar with the concept of training from a dealership environment or dealership level training, and at that time 20 years ago, it was not uncommon to go off site for 3 or 4 days and do some hands on. But a lot of the dealership training was, uh, I don't remember the acronym they used for it, but it was basically you watch some video for an hour off a DVD, you do some test, and you check the box. That was the extent of it, and there was certainly nothing from a management or how to run a shop, any of that stuff, and there was so many lessons learned with charging appropriately. And then, I know we kind of fast forward a little bit there, but starting out as a tech, and that's what the business was for a long, long time. And then over time, especially in a very narrow environment, like we only did GM diesel. I kind of dabbled a little bit with some of the Cummins stuff and some Power Stroke stuff, but I didn't really know it that well. I didn't have the scan tools for it. I didn't have service information for it, and I didn't really have the money or didn't choose to spend the money to go out and equip myself for non-GM makes, um, just because that stuff's expensive. So I knew the GM well, and I just stuck with it, and that was and I just kept that niche ever since. And you start seeing pattern failures, and then you start seeing, well, man, that could be improved, or this can be improved, or I wish there was a better way to do that, and not from a necessarily a procedural standpoint, but from a quality of product standpoint. So that turned into some product development and improving things so that they didn't continue to be a repeat failure, which led down the road of now, I guess you could term it light manufacturing, whereas taking raw aluminum stock and then transforming it into some part that actually does something, um, all in house. I mean, we do have a few processes that we're not doing in house, um, but then at the end of the day, to put your name on something and give it that stamp of this is good, this is really nice. And we were solving problems. So not only could a customer fix their vehicle, they could put something in there that was a superior product to take care of it so it didn't have to be an issue ever again.
And see, that's so interesting to transition. And you said it's all called merchant automotive, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're doing the manufacturing, and you had kind of got an early start on it from the help of that young man on, hey, I can sell these and ship these out all over, besides doing them right there in your shop. So
Right.
that's like amazing right there.
So you mentioned the young man on the internet. Um, we've we've kept in contact over the years, and I first was able to meet him probably 8 or 10 years ago in Colorado. He was living in Mississippi at the time, I believe, and now he's an adult. And I was in Colorado for an event, industry event, and we made the connection and actually got to meet each other for the first time. So it was surreal.
So how is Bill Gates?
Yeah, no, it's close. It's Brandon. I'll hold his last name back for his own privacy, but even with the initial logo, he was a lot better. And I don't know what he used, Microsoft Paint, but I kind of had this idea with the basic concept of the logo, and he threw some stuff together, and it's undergone some small revisions and some tweaks to what it is today. But even that kind of started out um, as his base stock, so to speak.
Oh my gosh.
So it's really interesting how that all fell into place as we talk about it out loud again. But again, my e-commerce was not my thought. I was a technician. So even through those early years, there was two aspects to the business. I'm the owner, the advisor, and I am everybody that's come through the all this understands all that. And then you're the technician. Well, you have to be the technician at night because you're on the phone during the day being the advisor. And then we would get calls for people wanting to order parts. So then you're trying to maintain this inventory of those parts. And then I would pick probably at that time, maybe 2, maybe 3 days a week where I would set aside time and then box orders and get those shipped out so I could take care of that side of things, all while trying to repair trucks. And that got to be a lot.
And how big is your shop now? Because you mentioned earlier you started with 38. Started with the two post lift in the side of the mobile home,
Yep.
and then you went to 3,800 feet. And so, how big is your shops now?
The current facility total space is about 22,000 feet for everything.
So it's like, okay, how am I going to fill 38? And now you've got 22,000.
It's 22,000. It's a building I don't own, and it's kind of broke up a little funky, which makes it take up more space than it really should, but we have lots of space. Um, my long term or my short term goal at this point, I feel like I'm 15 years behind doing it, is to have my own space, built exactly what I want, how I want it, to be more efficient, to be better utilized, and to take care of some deficiencies that we have now. But it's been nice because it's been cheap. The lease is very inexpensive by today's standards, but at the same time, I don't have anything at the end of the day for it either. So I would really love that's going to be the next big move for the company. But um,
And to me, I shared my story with you. To
mhm.
me, it makes a difference to own it.
Oh, that's such a huge thing, is to own the dirt you're in. And some of the stuff that you shared, you don't have to worry about somebody else influencing a direction or a decision that you're going to make.
And then you're more in charge.
Hmm.
So that's amazing. Tip of the iceberg story there. How many employees do you have now?
There's 18 of us as it sits right now in total.
And see, that's a big commitment that you support 18 families
Hmm.
and your business and the way that you built it. And we talked because, we're just a mom and pop shop here. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so laid back and versus the other way. But, there's pros and cons for both of it. And when you can grow in the industry, when you can support families, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah. And that the thing that's easy for me to take for granted, but I know better than doing so, but I have to remind myself all the time, is all the people that are have chose to spend their career. That's a big deal. And I think my senior people are probably almost 15 years. And we've got gone through some phases, and I think all businesses do that, some cyclic types of things, but for the most part, everybody's got some good long tenure. There's more people at 8 to 8+ years than there is at three and under years.
And that's another huge part of what we're trying to change in the industry is that you got to take care of your people.
They they're the reason that I'm in Midlothian, Texas, talking to Jeff.
While
And
your business is still going.
and I joke it probably is going better without me there. I I'm probably not the easiest one to work for. In Vision, this 2 weeks ago at Vision, in one of the keynotes, um, that the speaker had put on the projector screen, and I almost look at it daily now, and it was simple. It said, "You don't know what it's like to work for you." And I thought, well, this is probably the greatest job in the world before that. And I am a pain in the butt.
And
But
so sometimes you need, uh, to step back. Sometimes you need some of these classes, and I don't even know which one is coaching you. or helps you. But when you go to Vision, I know that you go to the different classes. I know that you had Rick White up there recently uh, teaching a class that you had like over 50 folks in attendance,
Hmm.
and so that speaks volumes. It's like I listened to your story, and it's like this is quite an accomplishment. And then when you come back and think you didn't have the management training, you didn't have the training to do online sales, and you were doing it before because with COVID came on, everybody was like, "Hey, okay, we can do all these, you know, deals from home or from the house,"
Right.
and you were doing all that before without the training because you've mentioned that in the past 18 months you've gotten more understanding of how all of that works.
And to be clear, I wasn't good at it. And the first part of your question that you had there. So at Vision last year, 2023, that was the first industry event, I'll call it, that I had attended. And up until a few months before that, I didn't even know that stuff existed. And while at that event, um, I was able to meet Cecil at the Institute, and and it was very eye opening. Not the Cecil portion necessarily, but just the discussion of numbers. Excuse me, and financials. And again, a multifaceted business with manufacturing, e-commerce, um, some retail sales, as well as the service area. And of course, the industry and the events are geared around the service and repair side, but business is still business. You got to have your ducks quacking at the same time. And reviewing those numbers for the service area, it was I was very quick to realize I was missing the boat. Man, was I missing the boat. We weren't charging enough. We weren't charging appropriately. We weren't marking up parts appropriately. Um, we were doing all the things that you're not supposed to do perfectly.
But you didn't know.
I didn't know.
And that is so interesting, because you see one of the mantras, we don't know what we don't know.
And I knew extra not knowing or something. But just the classes at Vision and I'd paid attention leading up to Vision enough to know I shouldn't be taking any technical classes, but it was bugging me because there were so many technical classes that was on that. I'm like, oh, that would be great. Oh, this would be awesome. I stuck with it. I did all management, leadership type classes, and the very first class I was in was Cecil. Through the weekend, I had another class with Rick White and some other, very powerful people that just made me realize, wow. And I came back from that with, I think we all do the the seminar high. I think I've heard it referred to as, and I wanted to change everything so fast. But I realized I couldn't. I'm very ADHD and I go in a bunch of different directions, but I don't necessarily have the diligence to follow it through to see it go to the end. I'll be zoned off onto the next thing, which is very difficult, but it goes back to having the people, the right people in the right seat, doing the right things, and quite literally magic starts happening.
And if you go in and you start changing everything, your folks kind of get confused as what is our mission? Where's our goal? What are we trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
And if you start changing them a little at a time, and then you go to the next event and the next event, and you listen to Cecil again, and you hear something you didn't hear the first time, and it's like one of the um, things that we mentioned was you go to the classes and okay, it's a 2 hour class, it's 4 hour class, it's all day class. Well, then at the end of the day, we go and meet around the lounge area, and that's just Cecil sitting there, and you can walk up and you can talk and you can give specifics and you can start picking the brain and you can start seeing, is there a fit? Is there not a fit? Do I like the direction he would take me?
Yep.
And that's even more valuable in a lot of ways than sitting in the class.
It there somewhere along the line over the years, I remember various quotes or versions of quotes, and one of them was, you know, business can be done in the boardroom, but the deals are made on the golf course, and that would be comparable to that, because seeing somebody in their professional environment, whether they're in, in front of a classroom teaching or on a stage or doing their professional duty versus the informal interaction um, outside of that. And for that matter, you know, you and I, we've made friendship through this show and me watching you and seeing you on social media and meeting at some of those events. But the conversations that we had last night and even this morning, you know, now there always was a friendship there, don't get me wrong, but now it's like I feel a lot more connected to you in ways that we would never get in 10 years of attending an event together.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's funny because on social media, we've been friends for a while,
Yeah.
but we never met in person. And then, to be able to, you walk up and you shake a hand. And we've talked about this earlier and yesterday. It's like some people you make a connection because they're interested, and some people they just kind of say, "Oh, hi," and then they look away and they wander off.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, and you have a story, and I had told you last night. I'm always interested in folks' story, and then to hear and today to be able to share this, where all these people are gonna be able. We're gonna put this out because we're recording it, and for more folks to hear that. And one of the biggest things that we're trying to change in our industry is, yes, you're a mechanic. Does that automatically make you a shop owner? No, but you can buy your way into it, and you can spend your way out of it. But to
Hmm.
be able to be successful, to be able to be profitable, and profitable is not a bad word.
It is definitely not a bad word. And last year when um I'd first met Cecil at Vision and we were having some discussion over numbers and things like that and all the different aspects of the business, and one of the, things that we kind of hit on was what was your profit for at that point in um boy, the years are all messed up. What was it for 22? I don't know. Whatever the term time frame was, now I'm drawing a blank. But net at the bottom line, my profit percentage started with a 0.04 and I'm like, huh,
Well, I had money in the bank. There
yeah,
was money in the checkbook.
yeah, I did until I went and got coffee this morning, and now it's gone. Uh, but I knew it should have been different. I knew it should have been better, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And the e-commerce game, I think, has changed somewhat, and by no means am I good at that either. But e-commerce is such a demanding thing from a price standpoint, because you're competing with not only all the other companies that are out there, but then you've got, you know, the Amazon, the eBay, all these things, and then they give something that frankly is near impossible for the mom and pop website to provide, which is that instant gratification, the free shipping, that afternoon to your doorstep. So it really makes you try extra hard at doing the things that they might not be able to do as well, which is that personal connection with the customer. People buy from people, they don't buy from companies. And you have to, I say it like we do it, but I'm saying it like we're still wanting to be better at it. is you have to have that inner connection with people. And it goes back to a lot of the advisor classes I've seen is when that bond is built between the customer and a shop or an advisor and a customer or any of that connection, the yeses are automatic almost. I mean, almost can be taken for granted if you're not careful. The e-commerce, it's 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 kind of the same thing, but I think it's just harder to build a customer up to that automatic yes, especially when there's so many options at a click of a button. You learn how to go above and beyond to capture it because racing to the bottom is not sustainable for any portion of any business. In our service department specifically, we are not the cheapest by any means. I don't know how we compare to other everything else around us, but I know that I feel that we're charging accordingly. We're learning how to present accordingly, and frankly, giving people the Ruth Chris experience. They can, anybody can go to McDonald's. You know what you're going to get. You know what you're going to spend, and that's their customer base. But I want somebody that likes to go to Ruth Chris once in a while, and they're going to spend what it takes to do that, and they know they're always going to get near perfection or close to it in very good service, and that's what you can't buy. Amazon and eBay and those types of places will never compete with any of us in that industry. And I say us meaning, you know, anybody that's interested enough in the aftermarket automotive to be watching this show. We all have something that we can give that can't be matched by um
One of
yeah,
the items that they teach at these shows is uh, to value yourself and value the service that you have to offer, and that's the difference. Is they click on and it's like, okay, we're going to make this part for you. It's going to take 2 weeks and we'll get it to you. And then if you have questions, you can call us, and our tech line is going to help you figure out if you've installed it properly and how to adjust it properly. And they can click on another one and go, oh, right here, I can. This is they got them stacked up from China, and I can press the button. I can get it this afternoon. But if I have a problem with either the quality or did I install it properly, there's no support.
right.
And that's the difference that a lot of times, as shop owners, business owners, we need to understand the value that we have, the value that we give. And that's what you're doing. And that's what, it's been proved, because to be in business 20 years it is an accomplishment. And it's like, okay, now we're offering service that the other ones don't. We're offering support that the other ones don't. And that's a value. And so that's a hard lesson for us to learn and for us to say, hey, there is value. So I can charge a little bit more. Uh,
And I would still argue that every one of us still undervalue ourselves. Even no matter how much we value ourselves, we still don't value ourselves to what we should be. And I've heard several analogies with, a dentist. You go sit in the dentist chair, um, or a plumber that, it's $250 to get him to show up to your doorstep. That doesn't count opening the tool bag. And nobody thinks twice about spending that money, but we as a whole in this industry are afraid to tell somebody it's going to cost money.
And we were talking about the price of a new vehicle. Some of these new diesel pickups are 70 to 90,000,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, okay, now those have to be repaired. And the amount of information that's in those, let's explain. There's more information in that F-250 than there is in the fighter jet.
Yeah, from not that long ago.
Yeah, that we have more lines, more codes of information, more computers, and then we have to access the computers. So if we're getting into the Chrysler products, and of course you specialize in the GM,
Right.
but there's fees that we have to pay to be able to access that information. There's fees that we have to, your phone will update automatic at night while you sleep. In order to update that vehicle with a new solution to an issue, we have to pay to get that information to be able to download it into the customer's vehicles. And those are all part of the education that we try to share. So we try to share our story, and then we try to educate. And you have already, listening to your story, you were already the expert in your area without you knowing it, just by going on forums and answering questions. And that's one of the promotions that I try to get folks to do is, okay, you specialize in GM. You're the expert, and not only in your area, but nationwide now because you're your e-commerce. And if every shop can look at it and say, "Oh my gosh, I can be the expert in my area," then their value goes up, and they're reaching the customers that they need to reach. And so I'm so glad you stopped by, and it was kind of a unusual circumstance because I didn't know you had driven to Vision, and then you were driving, and you went to Arkansas, and you went down to the coast of Texas. And John reached out and said, "Hey, Eric's coming back up through. Let me send him your address and see if he'll stop." Thank you so much for stopping.
I'm glad it worked out that way because I'm like, man, there's so many, and I probably drove by 100 people and only stopped at one as I came through because a trip like this, I don't want to have an agenda or a plan. Uh, my only plan is to be in Salt Lake on the 20th for Mars,
For Mars, and
and
that
just
continues your education
mhm,
with Cecil and supporting him, and him supporting yours, because when you leave Mars, and Mars is marketing for automotive repair shops, you will have a plan for your marketing for the next year. That's the goal of Mars. And it's like, okay, maybe that class should be in October, so your new plan will start effective, January, when everybody starts a new year. But this is going to be something that you're able to look at halfway through the year and say, what are we doing? What can we change the rest of this year? And then how can we plan for next year? Largest issues is Cecil will tell you, I'm not an expert in this area, in this area, in this area, but he's bringing those folks in.
mhm,
He's bringing the experts in those areas. And Cecil can tell you how to look at numbers.
yeah,
But can Cecil tell you, oh my gosh, Google changed an algorithm yesterday, and now what worked yesterday is changed slightly. And when you're doing e-commerce and when you're doing your shop, it's like, how do people find you? And what
yep,
changed about yesterday versus today? Those experts are going to be in there. And that's part of the stuff that we as shop owners need to get out and find out and get more involved. You
there's
had said last year was your first year at Vision. This was my first year, and I was like super impressed. Local event like Vision or like ASTE, it's like, okay, now I can hear these management courses from this one. I can hear these management courses from this one. I can determine what fits in my situation because every shop is not the same.
no, we are, but we aren't, and we all have our unique I mean, there's every one of us are unique in everything. Um, but when somebody picks up some knowledge and says that's not going to work, you don't know my area, you don't know my customer, and sure, there's 5% variation in that. There really is, but most of that is all buried in our hard heads. And it's confidence. I think you touched on that earlier. It's having that confidence or trusting yourself. And if you don't have that confidence in yourself, or your team doesn't have that confidence, customers can read right through that. And it's not an arrogance. Arrogance is way different than confidence. And arrogance, you kind of hit it on it a little bit one of your stories this morning as we were talking before this. And arrogance is the complete opposite of that. That's a bigger turn off than a light switch. But even if you only get a little bit out of something, it's so well worth it.
Well, in the years, you've been in business 20 years. I've been in business almost double that. And it's like when we go to these events, we can either go in with the ego of, oh my gosh, I've been in business as long. I know what I'm doing. Or you can go in and say, let me see what I can learn. Let me see if I can
Hmm.
pick up just one thing and expand from there. Okay, I pick up this year. Then I go to the because these events are every year. Then I go to another one, and it's like, okay, now I pick up something else. And it's like if you go to the attitude of you're always learning. In our industry, we are. It changes, daily. It changes yearly. We were talking
Hmm.
about you specialize in the GM diesels, and you were sharing the story earlier. The back in 12 to 16, there was an issue with a particular part, and I asked, okay, my son in law has the new 2024. Is he going to have that problem? No, they changed. They saw what the problem was, and now they've changed that particular part.
Hmm.
And we have to learn it, even though it's the same engine. The stuff is changing. The ADOS is changing. You're a transmission specialist, and the cruise control, the adaptive cruise control, changes where you can drive that vehicle up and down the mountains of Colorado, and it's not going to hit the brakes. It's working the transmission.
There's a lot of systems that come into play for just a simple little button on the dash.
And now we have 10-speed transmissions.
Yep.
And it's like it's all the time. We're all the time learning. But when you can come on and share part of what you learned, that's where we're trying to help others. And I appreciate so much. And we probably didn't get to all of your 20 years of wanting to share your story, but we've started. So hopefully the folks will listen, and
Absolutely.
we'll be able to get with you again. We'll actually be up in Mars, and we'll continue this story if because you were writing it all down, and you'll get on the road and you'll listen to this and you'll go, okay, now I need to tell about this, and we'll have another opportunity
I feel like there's
in Utah.
so many little tidbits over the years, but how many of them are interesting enough, for people to want to hear them or not? And it's fun to recap it all as I'm writing it, um, because it's amazing how much I remember from something that I had completely forgotten about, and then it just kind of turns into a big story. So it might have to be like a mini series of things that nobody wants to watch.
Eh, and that's okay being a main story, but people do. I've noticed more and more folks want to hear these stories, and we're so excited to be able to share them. And
Thank you.
thankful for our sponsors that allow me to take the time to to get folks like you to share your story. I appreciate it so much, Eric.
Thank you, Jeff.
And we're going to sign off on this. And y'all watch this. If you like this, Eric has Air, Merchant Automotive, a business page,
Hmm.
and then you have your Eric Merchant page.
Hmm.
And of course, then you can catch this on my YouTube channel. And so be sure and if you like this, leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up, some love, share it to other folks who can hear this story.
And if there's questions or something like that, I mean,
Reach out.
reach out. Yeah.
And on YouTube, I don't know how it is on your page, but on YouTube and on my pages, if somebody gives a comment, it pops up on our phones
Yep.
and we see
Yep.
it, and then we can answer it. And Eric's more than happy to do that.
Hmm.
Well, as always, we appreciate you watching.
Thank you.